everyone. I'm Don Gibson, Dean of the School of Economics and Business Administration. We are so happy to see you here tonight. I can't see all the people in the back, Dan. I'm bouncing off the top. All right, so you have to kind of crane your neck. Well, you don't want to see me anyway. Your guest is over here. Welcome. It's great to see you all live and in person. Certainly something we want to have more of, and I love the fact that we're standing room only. This is excellent. Welcome, everyone. It is really nice to have you. And now, back where I was really going to. So, the Dean's Executive Series, Speaker Series, features highly accomplished, visionary, and internationally recognized business leaders, and tonight is no exception. With us is Srujana Kaddevarmuth, a machine learning evangelist who brings over 15 years of technology leadership experience. Tonight, everyone, we're going to get under the hood of AI and machine learning. That's right, you heard it here first. And get her perspective of where this white-hot field is going. We've been talking, Philippe, a student up here in the front row, has just been talking about several instances of bots helping with his life, and okay, so we have to keep up. I think everyone can agree that our businesses and governments are currently in need of good leaders. That's what I want to emphasize first. In an increasingly complex and volatile economy and society, educating business leaders is more vital than ever, and I'm a believer that the best business education is a combination of cutting-edge business skills with the context, critical thinking, and emphasis on humanism that are the hallmarks of a strong liberal education. And that's the education we provide at St. Mary's and the School of Economics and Business Administration. And we are business with a difference, so I'm really glad you're here tonight. This event is co-sponsored by the Elfenworks Center for Responsible Business, which is dedicated to promoting business education and practices that transcend mere profitability to advance the common good and to drive positive social change. And I want to thank Director Michelle Strahilovitz, who is here tonight, and the Guyette Fellows, I think, are here. I want to thank our excellent faculty. Faculty, can you wave? There we are. I didn't make you stand. I thought that was nice. Thank you very much. You are the ones who really bring this education alive. So to use the language of risk management, I think a strong education in business is probably the best hedge you students have in negotiating the changing economic landscape ahead of you. So thankfully, our students have the advantage of being able to connect with SEBA advisory board members, and including our guest tonight. So Srujana is Vice President and Group Director, Machine Learning Center of Excellence for Walmart Global Tech, where she drives artificial intelligence innovation for this Fortune 1 $648 billion company. You may have heard of Walmart. She's helping the company to move up the value chain through data democratization and AI productization, 2 words we may learn more about tonight, developing and deploying generative AI products in marketing and customer domains, as well as others. Srujana holds numerous U.S. patents in the data science domain and has held previous positions with Accenture and Hewlett-Packard in data and AI leadership capacities. She has a Doctor of Technology from Purdue, an MBA from Alliance University, and has been part of executive certification programs at Stanford and Harvard. You should also know we offer, that's right, a doctorate and an MBA. We will forgive you for going somewhere else. Okay. She is an avid advocate for using data science and AI for social good and serves on the board of the United Nations Association, San Francisco chapter, focusing on using AI to attain global sustainability goals. So students, this is your opportunity. I will be talking to Srujana for 30 or 40 minutes, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. And that's your time to jump in with your questions. So we look forward to an engaging discussion. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming tonight, and welcome, Srujana.
Thanks, Don, for such a wonderful introduction. Very happy to be here and have this conversation.
Absolutely. Can you talk to us? Our students are looking at career paths ahead of them. Can you talk a little bit about what your career path was to get into these leadership positions at Accenture, HP,
Yeah.
Walmart?
Yeah. So I was born to the family of academicians, and my parents instilled a lot of values of appreciating gifts of life. I was focusing a lot on academics when I was growing up. That's how generally the family environment was, considering my parents were from academics. And I pursued engineering for my graduation. During the 8th semester of my engineering, I got placed with the Energy and Resources Institute. As a fresh engineering graduate, I was deployed into a particular department for my first job, which was around analyzing the biofuel cropping patterns. I was totally fascinated by the potential of this field, and after a short stint of 2 years with this organization, I went on to pursue a master's with specialization in operational research, and I started my career as a data scientist with Hewlett Packard. So there I was building a lot of models primarily to ensure that we drive greater outreach of our products in the personal system space. That included a lot of laptops and printers, etc. So my team built numerous models like market mix models to drive better marketing and outreach of these products. It was really fascinating. I grew in that particular organization and went on to lead its Big Data Analytics Center of Excellence. A lot of inundation of data. We started seeing multimodality of data in terms of the voice, text, as well as structured, unstructured data. So it was a very interesting phase in terms of exploring how big data could be used in the industry settings. I started to explore certain opportunities in the consulting domain because consulting domain is very interesting. If you work in a consulting domain for a few years, you get amazing exposure because you get to work with multiple clients, different problems to solve for, and a lot of mix in terms of the complexities associated with these different problems. So I explored this consulting career. I started my consulting career with Accenture, and I stayed with Accenture for around 5 years. There, our client was Google, and I built the Accenture-Google partnership for around 5 years, specifically in the data science space for its consumer hardware groups. So you might be knowing that Google has got quite a lot of consumer hardware goods, and my team was responsible for building a lot of recommendations, building next best user and next best action algorithms, and attracting the next billion users for Google for its consumer hardware products. After that, I was approached by Walmart, by the chief data officer of Walmart, and I pursued my career with Walmart. At Walmart, I lead and drive its customer modeling center of excellence, its machine learning portfolio for its 3 different businesses. They are called revenue or growth businesses. The first one is advertising, the second one is the membership business, and third one is data monetization business. So my team, I am fortunate to have amazing people on my team who are AI experts, machine learning evangelists, data engineers, and people who bring in product mindset in terms of deploying AI algorithms. So we work on building numerous products and primarily focus on productizing AI because we don't want to build products for one-off use cases. It's a large organization. We look at building once, leveraging multiple times, and driving efficiency for the organization. So we drive value for the organization, help the organization move with value chain through data democratization, AI democratization, as well as AI productization. So very excited to see this journey evolve. I had my own share of learnings and lessons through the years as well, but overall I feel that being open to this non-linear career path has helped me explore these leadership opportunities because when I was studying, we didn't have a formal domain as data science and AI as it is very prominent today. But being open to these multidisciplinary fields and exploring these non-linear career opportunities has helped me move forward.
Yeah, and can you say a little bit more about, these are some big companies you've worked with a lot of complexity. What are some of the challenges you had on that career? And can you say a bit, so one piece of learning was be flexible, look at what is new technology and look for opportunities. What other lessons would you draw from your path?
Yeah, so when you are in the beginning in your career, most of the times we want to go in a stealth mode, build everything ourselves, and then go to the CEO or maybe a VP and share. Then they'll say like, "Who are you? What are you building?" Right? So it's really important to be very collaborative and take different perspectives and bring people along if you're building different capabilities, which I learned hard way during the initial part of my career, because as a data scientist or as data scientists, we tend to think of some complex algorithms, but I know that it's really important to think of the simplest algorithm, because the simplest algorithm scales. So you get these experiences as you start working, but you can also learn it from the experiences from someone who has actually traversed this path. The other interesting exposure and learning that I had was when I started my career, expectation from a data scientist was a data scientist should bring in good algorithmic skill sets, they should have good domain knowledge, and they should have good understanding of stats or math behind that. But today, the expectation from a data scientist is much more. They need to understand the overall technology stack, they need to understand the production environment, they need to see and understand how the algorithms can be deployed and scaled. They also need to have an understanding of cloud computing infrastructure, because data is stored in cloud. So the overall learning was be agile and be adaptable and keep learning constantly, because the technology domain is evolving at a rapid speed, and you need to be really flexible in terms of learning new capabilities, new methodologies, and interact with different people, plug in diversified perspectives if you want your products and solutions to be adopted within the organization.
Wow, that's terrific. And I love that the simplest algorithms are the ones that are scalable. It's something for us to know. You've done some international work on gender diversity and encouraging gender diversity in high tech. Can you talk a little bit about why we're still so non-diverse in high tech, I guess, and do you see improvement in that area?
Yeah, so one of the pressing challenges, especially in the emerging technology domains, is gender diversity. Diversity of all sorts, but gender diversity is pressing. Primarily because when you have these different solutions or products that are built that are being used by different sections of the society. For example, let's say all of these AI products that we are building are used by different sections of the society. Everybody uses recommender systems. You all get recommended about what to eat, what to wear, where to go, how to travel, etc. So they are touching different sections of the society. However, we don't have the equal representation among the people who are building these technologies. So that results in some sort of a products which may not necessarily be very relevant. So as per Women in Tech statistics, 80% of the technology related jobs are still held by men, with only 20% being held by women. Only 26% of the computing related jobs are held by women. And the statistics is far worse if you think of people of Asian, Hispanic, or African American ethnicity. We see only 6% of women being on the technology boards for various startups in the United States. And the situation has further worsened, primarily because of the pandemic, right? Pandemic has exacerbated the situation. As per CNN, around 650,000 people, women, left the workforce during peak pandemic, and majority of them were in their prime working age of around 35 to 44 years. And they left and exited the technology workforce primarily because of their caregiving responsibility. We should acknowledge that pandemic has actually increased the emotional and psychological burden on women. It has done for all, but also on women primarily, which has resulted in this kind of exit because they are the primary caregivers in multiple homes and settings. So there are quite a lot of opportunities. However, the path ahead is quite challenging for women in technology space. So it's really important. A lot of companies are doing this study. McKinsey recently published a study and a research which said that corporate America is at the crossroads, and the decisions that we as leadership make today would have impact on gender diversity for years to come, which is so true. While there are numerous opportunities, I believe the way to bridge this gap in terms of gender diversity in the technology space is to, one, encourage more women, especially when they are in their academic
tenure to kind of explore some of the STEM courses and get them interested in the STEM domains, and then create an ecosystem where they can thrive either in the corporate setting or in the development setting, uh, such that they are able to thrive and are able to scale in the organizational ladder to create a greater macroeconomic impact, not just within the corporate setting, but also in the development sector.
Fantastic, and really appreciate your work in this area. Women in the room, how many of you are data science majors? Data analytics, statistics. There you go. See, raise those hands high. Nice. Absolutely. Good. We're glad you're here, and let's see if we can change these statistics.
Sure.
Thank you very much. I guess we better get to the heart of the thing. So what can organizations achieve with AI and machine learning, and how do you see that evolving over the next 5 years or so? Or maybe it's this week. How do you see it evolving this week?
Yeah. So we are on the cusp of this data deluge, right? So around 1.1 trillion gigabytes of data is getting generated every single day. Even as we speak, around 70% of the world is undergoing digitization, which is just humongous, right? When such humongous amount of heterogeneous, non-intuitive, messy data is getting generated, it becomes a responsibility of everyone involved in generating and using this data to do that in a responsible manner. This becomes particularly important because this multidisciplinary domains like blockchain, AI, augmented reality, virtual reality, as well as Internet of Things, all of these are impacting different facets of our lives, and these are the technologies of the future. So we are seeing a lot of applications of these technologies across different realms, and we are going to see that happening more and more in the coming decade. There are going to be 4 areas which are going to be significantly evolving over the next 4 to 10 years. And as you all are business administrators and people in the economics domain, in some capacity, you will be interacting with people in this domain, or you'll be in this domain and facilitating this particular revolution that's going to come in the next decade. So those 4 areas or sectors, the first one is the aviation sector. So we are going to see a lot of changes as well as evolution in the aviation sector, and that's going to be through the infusion of AI, robotics. We are going to see that impacting the interplanetary travel as well as interplanetary exploration. We already are seeing a lot of organizations like SpaceX, NASA using AI and robotics, and they have sent multiple rovers like Perseverance, Curiosity, Ingenuity to Mars to explore some habitats to understand, like, if we can explore some sort of spatial habitats. But this is just going to increase, and we'll see a lot of space travel happening, not only for the scientific exploration, but also for leisure. When that is going to happen, these space travelers would need goods and services. So there's a parallel economy in retail that's going to boom in terms of creating capabilities to provide these goods and services to people who are doing this space exploration for leisure. Second area is going to be around the retail sector, specifically around the retail manufacturing sector. So we'll see that there are going to be a lot of AI and robotic systems that are going to be installed in the retail ecosystem across, especially in the areas like eco-friendly goods packaging, delivery, etc. This is going to make the supply chain more resilient, more predictable, less prone to human errors, and more cost effective. So it's going to make the overall supply chain efficient, but at the same time automated. So the job dynamics or the employment dynamics within the retail space is going to shift significantly. The second area is around transport. The third area is around transportation and fleet. We are going to see a lot of automated or autonomous machines being used in space. Currently, we are seeing that most of the larger retail organizations are using autonomous machines to transport goods from fulfillment centers to the distribution centers. Multiple organizations like Walmart are using drone delivery to transport goods and services to the suppliers, to the consumers at their doorstep. It's just going to evolve, and we'll see more of such applications. And the last area is going to be a significant one, is going to be around the customer experience. All of you, regardless of whichever domain you are going to be in, you will be interacting with customers and consumers. So you'll see a lot of AI being used in the customer space in terms of driving advanced customer experiences. For example, now we are using augmented reality to kind of create the virtual fitting room experiences for our customers who want to do virtual try-ons. We are also exploring conversational platforms, specifically around using large language models, chatbots, as well as focusing on social commerce. The first level customer support is going to be completely automated. So we'll see a lot of changes and shifts in the customer experience space, mostly driven by improving the overall search recommendation algorithms. So these are few areas I think are going to see a lot of evolution through the infusion of robotics and AI.
Wow, all right, I can't get my fashion together on Earth, but now I have to think about space. Okay. And I guess we better go to the other side. So what are some of the unintended negative consequences or intended negative consequences of AI that we need to be aware of? And are there ways to mitigate it, perhaps in like companies that you've been part of?
Yeah, so this is really important because AI is evolving significantly, so is the regulation. We are still in the nascent stage, but it is evolving a lot. And most of the companies are in the catch-up game, but we are seeing a lot of countries are introducing their own executive orders to think of how we should bring in ethical aspects and dimensions to the algorithmic deployments. So we are seeing significant applications of AI across different domains of our lives. Most of the organizations, which could be corporate organizations or government organizations, are delegating their decision-making powers to these algorithms. We are delegating some important, extremely critical decisions around legal sentencing, job applications, college admissions, medical provisioning to these algorithms, which is really risky. But that has to happen because just the field is evolving. And not only the critical life-altering decisions, we are also delegating small day-to-day decisions around what to eat, what to wear, what to watch, where to travel, whom to date, whom to make friends with on social media. All of these decisions are being delegated to the algorithms because they are providing us those recommendations through numerous applications that we use on day-to-day basis. And we are getting influenced by those recommendations and we are making decisions accordingly. Now, these algorithms come up with certain outcomes based on the data that they have been trained on. However, this data may have a lot of biases. For example, these machine learning algorithms are the statistical representation of the world that we live in. So they come up with some sort of outcomes based on the data that they have been trained on, and this data would have some sort of a bias, then the outcome would also be biased. So we have seen many comments unleashed on social media which are racist in nature because they have been trained on the data which has got such examples on public display. So it's really important for us to understand how these algorithms work. Many a times these algorithms are explainable, but there are certain scenarios where these algorithms are not explainable. Even the experts in the industry cannot decipher and say how a particular algorithm came to a particular conclusion. This lack of transparency creates challenges in terms of believing and trusting these algorithms, especially when they are deployed in the production environment. Because when they are actually deployed in the production environment and they are scaled, what is going to happen is we are institutionalizing that bias that exists in that particular data and that algorithm. And that is really scary. It can lead to some sort of a reputational challenges for the organization. So one needs to be really careful and mindful of that. Very simple example is around personalization and hyper-personalization. We need to build certain ethical guardrails in terms of how we look at personalizing and looking at the recommendations that we provide. For example, personalization is great, but hyper-personalization is not, because it keeps reinforcing the same interests and belief systems amongst the people, and that's the concept that we call as filter bubble, because people think that they are getting the representative view of the world, but in reality they are not, and they do not know that. Just for an example, this is an election year. Let's say there are certain people who are Democrats pro, and they keep looking at the news that is pro Democrats, and they keep searching such articles. So that group will be shown or recommended the articles that speak in favor of Democrats. And let's say there's group B, which has searched historically some articles which are pro-Republican. They'll be shown the articles that are pro-Republican. Both the parties think that they are getting the representative view of the world, but in reality they are not. They have been recommended certain things based on the history of search. So this creates a lot of chaos in the society, because it's not helping us gain this kind of a representative view of the world. So algorithms can be really useful. For example, it can help people with disability. We can build numerous solutions. There are a lot of benefits of using AI to improve the biodiversity, to predict wildlife threats or fires, forest fires, and mitigate them in the timely manner, and for hazard control as well. However, we need to channelize them in an effective manner, and you as business administrators of future and economists play an important role in terms of channelizing these algorithms to be deployed in a manner that it is helpful for our society rather than being detrimental.
Thank you, thank you. Have you had a time where you were faced with an ethical decision in terms of what either an algorithm to implement or a technology that you to put into place, and you had to think through whether that was ethically, like you could do it, but is that ethically what we should do?
Yeah, so very recently we were working on certain things, right? And this is the big debate in the industry as well, right? So we have got these large language models, generative AI algorithms that help with content creation. So that would mean that quite a lot of creative teams within the organization would be replaced by these algorithms, which can just within a click of a button can generate hundreds of content that are personalized to the theme and the concept that we are looking for. However, that content that we are generating through these algorithms may not necessarily accurately represent the brand values, right? So, for example, it may say like, oh, this is your competitor, get rid of your competitor, and like you should be buying certain things from our company. That's not something that's tuned. That message does not resonate very well with certain brands. So it's really important to understand the code of ethics in terms of how a message should be generated, how a brand should be portrayed, and that requires a lot of human diligence. Otherwise, there will be reputational implications for the brand that's been built over years. So that's why we decided in this situation specifically that we need to go with a human in a loop concept, right? So there are quite a lot of such ethical dilemmas today these leaders are facing, and we need to make these decisions one-on-one basis.
Yeah, and do you have an example where, and we often hear with AI, the government or some other regulatory body should create guidelines or guardrails. Have you had to create guidelines or guardrails in companies that you've been at to kind of keep AI within that ethical boundary?
Yeah, that's right. So it's important to create a sandbox so that the data scientists within the organization can play around, can explore the art of possible. Otherwise, we'll stifle innovation. But at the same time, if something is going in the production deployment, we need to definitely keep some guardrails. We need to put some guardrails because that's going to impact the customers. Especially today, as the regulation is evolving, we are seeing that because of the GDPR, because of the CCPA, and a lot of other regulations, consent is very important. How we are using the customer consent and the data. Are we protecting customers and consumers' right to privacy? Are we creating the marketing campaigns which are easily understood by the consumers and not using the flowery language where they may get confused? So there are multiple ethical aspects that one needs to look at, especially in the leadership position when we are deploying these algorithms.
Yeah, and you've already touched on this, but a key trade-off is between privacy concerns and the hyper-personalization.
That's right.
Are there ways to how do you prevent the invasions of privacy while also targeting your brand messages?
Yeah, there's no compromise on privacy.
Okay.
Basics first, right? So we cannot compromise on privacy for any kind of a monetization goals, period, right? So it will have a lot of brand and reputational implications for the organization. So we only look at the consented data, and that too at the aggregate level to drive some of these recommendations. It could be at a cohort level. Let's say there is a lookalike cohort of a particular customers with similar demographics, and then we carve out the other group with similar demographics, and then purchase history, etc., and then provide those recommendations. We do not go ahead and look at hyper-personalizing because we are very well aware of some challenges around filterable. So we also, when we are looking at providing these recommendations, there are multiple KPIs and indicators that one needs to look at, right? And as data science leaders across the industry, we keep emphasizing on these practices, specifically around understanding if the data that's been used to drive these kind of recommendations are they specifically representing different diverse groups. Is the data representative enough to drive these recommendations or not, right?
Yeah.
So all of these key, we call them KPIs, key performance indicators, are already included in our code of ethics in terms of how we build these algorithms, how we deploy that. On top of that, we have something called as ethical AI suite, which is a monitoring algorithm which keeps monitoring and says like, if there are certain algorithms that are not meeting the ethical standards, we get to know and we can do the course correction in a dynamic manner.
Interesting. So lookalike cohort, just so everybody understands. So you create a cohort that matches the demographics of the group you're interested in.
That's right, that's right. So it's basically looking at if there is a person A who belongs to a particular cohort and they are having preferences to certain brands and they belong to certain demographic profile. So we look at all of that and then create those cohorts. And then we look at, is there another cohort with similar kind of characteristics? And then we use a lot of clustering techniques, homogeneous within, heterogeneous outside, and all of that. So come up with right kind of a cohorts to do targeting, specifically if you want to show the right kind of advertisement that's relevant to the customers or any kind of other marketing campaigns to drive greater convenience and better customer experiences.
Yeah, very interesting. And also the active ethical AI monitoring, that goes on all the time.
Yeah, it's right. That's right.
Very interesting. So how can we foster inclusion and diversity in data science? And what is your vision for a human-centric ethical AI future? Just a tiny question.
Yeah, so we need to bring in diversity in the data science domain. It's really important and critical because the algorithms sometimes are difficult to interpret. There are also certain challenges around concept drift, right? These algorithms need to be constantly connected to the new data feed. If they are not, they degrade in quality and they are not able to provide the right kind of accurate output. And for that, we need to ensure that there is diverse data and there are diverse kind of stakeholders involved in terms of creating these ecosystems as well as the production deployments. But also there are two very important pressing challenges that we see today, and it's only going to increase and evolve. The first one is around deepfake. Right? So we are seeing a lot of AI algorithms being used to create fake videos, audios, and that may sometimes lead to misinformation. And some of these deepfake targeted misinformation campaigns can erode trust in the informational agencies, in credible or established institutions, and may make it very difficult for people to decipher the truth from falsehood. And this can result in polarization, social divide,
and can lead to a lot of social problems. This is especially true because there are multiple nations this year who went on polls, uh, went for the election, and was used in various scenarios to cause deliberate harm to the candidates who were contesting in these elections. That can lead to erosion of trust, and it's really important for everybody to be aware, especially because we are consumers of this content, right? And a lot of this content is out there on social media side. So if you have diverse people involved, if you are working in a cross-functional and collaborative manner, then we can mitigate such problems to a significant level. We need to work very closely with governance people, we need to work with digital citizenship team, we need to work very closely with legal teams, and bringing people with diverse backgrounds, with whether it is ethnic diversity, neurodiversity, is really important, as well as the gender diversity. It's really important to build solutions that are more effective, accurate, and relatable to all sorts of stakeholders that we intend to drive value to. The second challenge is specifically around the lack of diversity resulting in some sort of skewness in terms of how the products are being deployed and developed, right? So we are seeing that most of these products that are being developed, wherein there is not a lot of diversity, there is a lot of hype in the initial stages, but they don't necessarily take off. So the return on investment is very low, and that's why it's leading to erosion of trust from the investors. They are pouring in a lot of money in, let's say, generative AI algorithms, but the return on investment is not that great. And the reason for that is there is lack of diversity in the domain, and we are not building products that are futuristic in nature. So it's really important to think of that. The third aspect, what Dean asked specifically, is around a human-centric future. We need to think of building algorithms, building capabilities with human in a loop concept. That's going to be super important. While we can automate a lot of mundane, repetitive tasks, it's really important to have a role in the decision-making ability that is reserved for humans involved in the ecosystem. We need to create capabilities that are complementary in nature. Otherwise, it's going to create a lot of shift in the employment situation and dynamics, which can lead to unsustainable markets and a lot of crime and other situations which could be really dangerous for the social setting. So it's really important for us to look at two aspects. One is making sure that we build products and that should incorporate or involve people from diversified backgrounds. Second is, when we build these products, we need to make sure that we are keeping human aspect alive and looking at the complementary aspects of deploying this. For example, if you want to use smart creatives and if you want to generate contents using large language models, it's really important to have human or a creative head or creative team to have a look at the images or the text that has been generated by these algorithms, supervise, create governance parameters, and then release them so that we are not necessarily creating unintended consequences for customers and consumers, right? So these are the two aspects that I think as future administrators you may want to keep in mind. And we are also seeing a lot of countries releasing code of conduct as well as the policies. We are seeing FTCs coming up with numerous policies every other day. So it's becoming difficult for organizations to keep up with, but it's really important to be compliant with these. Otherwise, we may end up in some sort of a legal challenges as well.
Yeah, I love that point. Diversity and inclusion is not just to be good about diversity and inclusion. Your product will be affected by this, and it won't be as effective. I think it's a great point. So I only have a couple more questions. I hope you're ready out there. It's going to be a lot of dead air. All right. So you are a machine learning evangelist, but it sounds like you also do that with caution and a lot of human involvement. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so it's important to, especially for AI evangelists or AI leaders, to think of uh, having humans involved, because ethics is not an outcome of a particular process. It's an element of every step of the process, right? So many a times I hear some of the leaders in the industry talking about ethics being included at the outcome stage. It never works that way. Ethics has to be included at every aspect. It has to be embedded in the design phase itself. And how do we do that? We do that by creating that component in the design phase of the capability that we are building, and also by interacting with diversified stakeholders, getting their take, working with the product, governance, legal teams to understand the nuances and incorporating that. And at the same time, ensuring that every step of data science life cycle, may it be in terms of feature engineering, algorithmic development, evaluation of the algorithm, and deployment of the algorithm, we need to have ethical aspects embedded across all of these different phases of data science deployments. The second aspect is around looking at effective and thorough documentation. I see that that's significantly lacking in the industry these days. We don't focus a lot on documentation. We go ahead and then start deploying certain things, and something goes wrong. Nobody's aware why certain aspects went wrong significantly. So thorough and effective documentation along the process is going to be super important, because that will help us bring clarity across stakeholders in terms of what are the capabilities and limitations of these algorithms that we are deploying. And it also helps in bringing in these stakeholders along when we actually go ahead with the production deployment. So it makes the algorithms more explainable, and then the AI leaders would be forced to use the algorithms that are explainable in nature, because if they're not using that, they cannot necessarily document how a particular algorithm came to a particular conclusion. So enforcing thorough and effective documentation becomes really important. That's the second thing. The third aspect is specifically around dynamically monitoring these AI systems, right? Doing ethical AI audits. This is going to be super important, because when we start to deploy these algorithms, they may be all ethically tuned. However, machine learning algorithms get smarter over a period of time when they are connected to the constant and new data feed. They keep constantly learning and adjusting themselves through a feedback loop. If we are not doing these audits and monitoring them on a sustainable basis, then even though they were compliant in the beginning, they may not be compliant as we process and proceed along. So that's why it's going to be super important to first think of ethics and embedding them in the design phase itself. Second, thorough and effective documentation. Third, carrying out dynamic ethical AI auditing.
Yeah, it's so important to remember these things are dynamic. They're learning over time. Now, one of the reasons some of you may have come tonight is to say, is AI going to take my job? So in order for that not to happen, good for you for coming tonight, I'd like to ask, what kinds of skills do you think our students need to succeed in this new world? And I guess what we've heard so far is you need a lot of understanding of AI and machine learning, because it's coming, it's here. You need to understand how you're going to be the human loop.
Yeah, so I keep thinking about this even for my kids. I have twin kids, and they are 11 years old. My daughter is interested in Python, and my son is doing some graphical models. But we don't know if those technologies would be relevant tomorrow, right? When I started my career in the industry, there was a algorithm of the analysis system called as SPSS.
Yeah.
And then it changed. Then there was SAS, then there's Python, then there's PySpark. We just kept evolving significantly. So just be open to the change, because the algorithm, the technology keeps evolving and changing significantly. One needs to work collaboratively, that's going to be important. But starting from the technological space, right? So what are the skill sets that are needed for people to be employable in the next few years. It's going to be sophisticated technical domain knowledge, right? Industry is not going horizontal, it's going vertical. So having in-depth understanding of technology and specifically certain aspects of technology is going to be important. As you enter the industry, you may want to look at certain area, let's say supervised machine learning algorithms, etc., and start to dig in deeper and attain some sort of subject matter expertise. But more from the other skill sets that one could acquire as business administrators of the future are going to be around, regardless of whichever domain that you enter, whichever industry, either corporate or development sector that you enter, there are chances that you will be working or dealing with AI on day-to-day basis. So it's going to be super important to one understand what are those specific technologies that can get automated. Some of the basic skills like SQL, etc., are going to get automated. First level customer support is going to get automated. Whatever can get easily automated is going to get automated in the coming years. So you'll see a job shift happening from those specific job families to something else. But if you talk about the deep tech, in terms of having a nuanced understanding of the algorithms, production systems, cloud computing infrastructure, etc., those jobs are here to stay. They are not going to get automated so easily. And we would still keep expanding AI across different domains, different industries, etc. And it is transforming multiple industries as we speak. So there'll be need for people with those skill sets there. Apart from that, in terms of the soft skill, we would need more people in the industry who are willing to collaborate, because all of these futuristic technology are multidisciplinary in nature. We cannot go in stealth mode in silos and work independently. It requires significant amount of collaboration, understanding different perspectives to build these technologies and deploy them effectively. Second aspect is being very agile, being willing to evolve, adopt, learn, grow is going to be super important. Third, having humanistic characters around empathy, creative thinking, that's going to differentiate us from these technological systems that would be deployed, and we will be valued for that, right? So ability to solve problems, being very creative in terms of solving problems, being able to understand complex ecosystems and navigate them effectively, all of that requires a lot of human tendencies, and I think we need to differentiate ourselves based on these human tendencies, especially in this age of AI. So those are the skill sets that I think are going to make you employable.
That's terrific, and certainly something we work on with our students is that combination of hard and soft skills, if you will. We need the technical, in-depth skills, but communication, leadership, collaboration, teamwork, these are the kind of long, durable skills, I think they're called now, that will be a constant you're going to need. So you are an evangelist. This is fantastic for this kind of education. Do you have any questions for Srujana? Please, you can raise your hand and we'll pass the mic around. Okay, there we are, in the back. Yep.
Yeah, my question is mostly regarding one of the issues current AI is having is getting more data. So one of the things I heard about was generative models running out of data to keep feeding into it. And in some cases, AI-generated data being fed back into the data, causing problems. How, in your field, are different solutions being sought to address that issue?
Yeah, this is a very current problem that we are seeing, especially with large language models, because they've been trained on a lot of unstructured data. Which is publicly available, whatever is available in the internet, that is usable in the usable format is been trained. But there's plethora of data that is proprietary in nature, right, that exists with these organizations. For example, transaction data. We can generate billions of transactions in a month, and all of this transaction data, which is structured data, sits with different organizations. And even there are a lot of restrictions around the creative material that are being used by these algorithms now there are constraints in terms of how much of these creative material could be used to train these algorithms. That is creating some sort of a constrained capacity in terms of the data being available to train these large language models. However, there's a lot of multilingual information, dialects, scripts, etc. that are all there, which these algorithms can train on. But there are limitations. The limitations are not only in the space of data being available, but the limitation is also in terms of this at the silicon layer, right? In terms of how much we can train these algorithms on, what is the capacity, and how much can these algorithms consume. So the silicon is a challenge. Then there's the application layer. They also have certain limitations. On top of that, the algorithms themselves have a limitation. On top of that, we are talking about restricting some data to be used. So the unlock has to happen across all of these layers and not just at the data layer.
Very interesting. Thank you. Yes, the hand right there. And then Philippe, you gotta have a question, right?
Thank you for the wonderful session that you conducted. We had a question on responsibility. You talked about bias and control. You currently engage in developing models, but what happens when people utilize the algorithms in mischief or in ways that were not intended? Who takes responsibility for it? In the social media spaces, we've seen Facebook being held accountable. What about on the AI side of things?
Yeah, so very good question. Thank you so much for asking. So the companies that are producing these algorithms have to be held responsible, but the responsibility doesn't end there. So it's really important to understand everybody who is involved in consuming and creating this data need to be using these algorithms and the outputs generated from these algorithms in a responsible manner. Because companies can only do certain things. We cannot necessarily blame the companies all the time for how certain recommendations are being consumed, etc. Because the policies and regulations can keep evolving and they need to keep evolving, and companies have to be compliant and be responsible in terms of deploying that. Along with that, we as citizens, we as consumers need to be aware in terms of how do we use these algorithms, what to believe and what not to believe. There is a lot of education that needs to be given to the general consumers as well who are consuming this content, because I've seen like multiple unintended consequences that are happening primarily because not everybody is aware of how these algorithms work and what kind of a content is being shown to them, what are the principles in terms of how this particular content is being chosen to them. Because many kids are in their formative ages and they get exposed to that content and that influences them negatively. So it's really important for us to drive a lot of awareness, both in terms of the consumers as well as hold the companies accountable in terms of building these algorithms and deploying these capabilities in a responsible manner.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes, Michelle? Or was there another one? Hold your hand high so we can find you. There, we got it.
Thank you so much for joining us here today again. I'm sure we're all gaining some great insight from you, so thank you. I'm curious, as we kind of navigate into this uncharted future, within humanity, what do you see will be the greatest net benefits that humanity will receive from AI that you're kind of aware of and you're thinking of as we kind of head into this future? I'm curious.
Thank you. This is a very deep question, right? So I think the biggest outcome is going to be us as humans creating capabilities to live in space. And this is going to be a significant impact that AI and robotics are going to drive in the near future. All right. So interplanetary exploration and creating capabilities to live in space is going to become a reality. We are seeing a lot of companies already investing significant amount of resources in terms of making this a reality, and I think it will happen in our lifetime.
All right, we are departing the planet. Yes, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, building off one of your earlier questions, you mentioned lack of transparency in the algorithms and lack of documentation and law. But like companies like Apple in their iPhone 16 or Waymo driverless cars, Tesla robots, they're already using AI. So how can we trust their algorithms now? Are there like red flags we should look for as consumers?
Yeah, very interesting question. I think about that myself, right? Like, you know, especially if you want to use the Tesla's autonomous driving feature, how much can I trust that? Right? And despite me being in the AI domain, when it comes to your life, you want to be cautious. You want to see how much you can trust that, right? So I think it's going to be a process. I don't believe that the algorithms are there yet wherein it's absolutely safe in terms of just completely trusting them and not necessarily exploring avenues to intervene. We should always be cautious but cautiously optimistic, because these algorithms are really evolving, and many a times as humans we may have certain limitations in terms of memory, attention, etc. But the algorithms are very accurate, and they work very well because they do not have these kind of limitations. Sometimes as humans we are overcome by our emotions and we may not necessarily be very attentive when you talk about Tesla self-driving autonomous applications, but then algorithms are more predictable in that context, right? So yeah, it's a combination. It's going to be a process, slowly being cautiously optimistic and then going with the flow. Right? It's going to be here and now. We cannot avoid it for a long time. So we need to get on the train either now or in few years.
Yeah, are you ready to put your kids in the Tesla autonomous vehicle? That's the question.
Yeah.
They're already saying, "Mommy, are you taking our jobs?" Yeah. Michelle. Oh, okay. Couple more questions.
So I work in the field of intellectual property, patent law specifically, and AI has introduced a different fear in inventions, and I'm just wondering what your take is on that.
I agree. It's going to be very different in terms of the intellectual property domain is going to evolve significantly in the coming years, right? There are going to be more stringent laws in terms of how and what qualifies as intellectual property, because most of these algorithms are creating a lot of content, right? And sometimes that may lead to some sort of a violation of the intellectual property. But we do not have all the laws yet in terms of protecting this intellectual property. So it's going to be the phase where the laws and regulation needs to catch up and evolve, because the algorithms are exceeding and superseding in the space, right? So I think the law and the regulation is far behind in terms of how the intellectual property is viewed at, because until a few years ago, we did not have large language models. The content generation was not happening to this extent that it happens now. Today, significant amount of content can be generated using ChatGPT, etc. And these algorithms are using the content created by certain people, which is considered as an intellectual property and copyright. So it's a very complex situation and dynamics that we are in, right? So the regulation catching pace and we having stringent regulations to protect IP and redefine what can be considered as an intellectual property generated by humans is going to dictate how this space evolves.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, isn't IP that hasn't even caught up to social media yet, so IP law is a long way to go. A couple more questions. We have on up here. Oh, now Philippe jumps in. Okay. Michelle, you go first because you're closest to the mic. Are you still scared of bots or are you all in now?
Philippe has won me over, as I mentioned. Somewhat. Not when I'm calling an airline or something like that. So it's interesting works at NASA and is writing his dissertation on the space economy. That said, anyone who's got email from me knows that my signature says there is no planet B. And given that there's a chance we won't all end up living in space and that our children won't all be able to live in space, I wanted to know if you could speak a little bit about how AI is being deployed to keep our planet healthy and safe, because I know you've been involved in some of those efforts since I've been following you on LinkedIn. And it's really impressive. Y'all should follow her on LinkedIn. She's doing a lot of great stuff. You learn a lot, yeah.
Yeah, so I serve on the board of United Nations Association. Primarily, we focus on using AI for social good. We focus on using AI to attain global sustainable development goals. Very recently, just a couple of weeks ago, I was on the board of Bezos Earth Fund, where we were evaluating multiple proposals from researchers across the globe in terms of exploring solutions to use AI to revive proteins, to protect our marine ecosystem, to enhance biodiversity. So AI is significantly used in all of these areas. One specific example happens to be in terms of, very recently we have been working very closely with Ocean Protection Council, that's California's Natural Resources Agency and Ocean Protection Council, and creating metadata, which are all images in terms of what specific areas are available for forest habitats, how are marine ecosystems evolving, etc., and crowdsourcing that information to and providing an opportunity for researchers across the globe to build algorithms in the form of a hackathon and asking them to come up with some sort of a solutions to help us predict the wildfires well in time so that we can prevent them. And also in terms of creating solutions to prevent the marine pollution, because that is adversely impacting the marine ecosystem. Very recently, we also ran a hackathon with Stanford University. I work very closely with Stanford University, specifically in terms of driving WITS initiative, which is Women in Data Science Initiative, which is a global initiative to bring in more diversity in the domain. And we ran a datathon, which primarily focused on deforestation, mitigating the deforestation through this oil or palm oil plantations, right? Palm oil plantations are leading to a lot of deforestation, and then there is a lot of challenges in terms of the resources, especially a lot of these animals are displaced from their habitats. And all of this is done just to gain some sort of a monetary advantage, right? And this is negatively impacting the ecosystem, and it would take several years to reverse the impact that's been caused due to this palm oil plantations. So we did this hackathon, and best of the research papers were published in the MIT Journal, as well as we are working with different governments to implement those solutions. So there are multiple endeavors that we are exploring in terms of protecting this planet and making sure that we bring in more sustainable initiatives to protect our environment.
So we can stay on Earth if we want to.
Yes, definitely, we have an option.
That's the concept.
Awesome.
All right, one more question? Oh,
That was the last one, wow. I had a lot of questions.
you get one.
I get one, so I'm gonna make it multifold, so thank you for being here. I'm wondering, large language models, what's the impact on retail for Walmart? First part, how do you think about it? And the second part is, instead of having agents that sell to me, I'd like to have an agent that buys for me. And is that a threat to Walmart? You have an agent properly configured who buys everything I need, and I configure it, but I never have to go shopping again. Is that a threat to Walmart?
So, I don't think so anything should be a threat to a particular company, because companies should not be doing certain things just thinking about how they want to run the business. It should be all consumer driven. If the entire trend shift to consumers buying through these bots, etc., then the Walmart or any other company for that matter would figure out how do they then think of building some monetization capabilities and models because ultimately companies and organizations which are successful should follow the customer and consumer trends, and that's where they are going to be successful. And secondly, they should look at the competitors. But first is like actually focusing on how the consumer trends are shifting. For example, Walmart significantly focused on the physical retail until a few years ago. But it started investing in the e-commerce business, and that's when the COVID pandemic hit. Because it had invested in the e-commerce business, it was able to sustain and grow that significantly during that time. And then it started thinking that we don't have to try to compete with Amazon or other retailers. The biggest unique selling proposition for the company is that we have both physical as well as online, and the penetration that we have through our physical stores is so significant that 90% of the US population lives within 9 miles of Walmart. So that's our competitive advantage. So that's why we should look at the omni-channel, wherein customers can look at buying things in store, but getting that delivered at home. So, or maybe going there and picking up as well. So there are multiple avenues and modalities in terms of how a customer could engage, and we are making it easy and sustainable through this omni-channel retail, and that's been our competitive advantage. So I think overall, as customers' preferences evolve, as customer trends evolve, and their buying patterns evolve, any successful organization should adapt and adjust itself to follow those trends rather than being rigid.
All right. Wait, I think we can squeeze in a couple more questions. Catherine, where'd you?
Right here.
Where'd you? Oh, on and then right behind you.
Well, as academics, and we've seen our signs here, we are shaping leaders, and so the first thing we would need is to get them in the door. So I know I want to address your diversity, and especially gender diversity. How do we as academics, as teachers, even get the students, the female students in the door to help shape them and develop them, and maybe not even at the college level, but even earlier on than that. And if you can speak to that, and what should we do or what can we do to encourage more women going into data science and AI?
Yeah, this is a wonderful question. In fact, we've been doing some work in this space. As I mentioned, we have a global initiative called as WITS, which is Women in Data Science. We have been engaged with the high school students. One of the significant vacuum or the gap that we saw existed in the industry is that we didn't have a lot of female role models. If you go to a lot of conferences, it's mostly men who are speaking. We didn't have a lot of women speakers, we didn't have a lot of women role models. So if you just talk about anyone in the field of AI, it would only be Fifi Lee. But there are like so many women who are luminaries, who are distinguished data scientists, AI experts, but they never got a platform. So through Women in Data Science, we started getting more women to speak about amazing work that they are driving for their particular organization or for the societies that they belong to, and globally. And that created a cascade effect, and many people started getting inspired, and they started seeing their future self in them, and then started exploring those dimensions of education. And we are also doing a high school outreach program wherein we interact with the students and show them a video of day in a life of a data scientist. And these data scientists come from different domains, and mostly women come from different domains, different sections of the society. And one of them works at White House, the other person works at the environmental refinery. There's other person who is working with some forest guards in remote areas of Africa. So there are multiple very interesting, amazing professions that these data scientists are pursuing. And we explored some of them and then created a video. Some of them work for Spotify, some other technology companies, etc. So we created a day in a life of a data scientist video. We got that and did an outreach for the high school students, and we saw that there was a lot of interest. It's just that there's not a lot of awareness, right? So providing that kind of awareness and just
generating that interest and driving that mobilization at the high school level is going to be super important.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
All right, this really is the last question.
Thank you. Hello, thank you both for being here tonight. So as you both mentioned earlier, this is an election year, right? We all know that, I hope.
What?
And myself, I'm 19 years old, and many of my peers, this is our first time being able to vote. You work for Walmart, but you have a much more broad idea of what the heck data is and how to analyze it. So I wanted to ask you, in your experience, have you seen or do you expect that AI is affecting or will affect the accurate representation of voter decisions, really in America as a whole?
Yeah, one of the ways in which it may affect is through these deepfake videos. We are seeing a lot of misrepresentation of the candidates happening through AI, and many a times the campaign managers can get to it, but in a lot of instances they are not able to. And for the first time we are seeing that Silicon Valley is divided and the funds are divided, so it's going to be a really interesting year. But I think because of so many parties being involved and like technology industry being deeply involved in this election, like no other election, we are seeing the magnitude of these deepfake videos and the way the content has been created and curated has been significantly influencing the voter decisions. So we'll see the outcome in the coming days, but it's been a concern, and even regulators are aware of that, but there is little that they could do at this point in time. There needs to be exhaustive policies, and there needs to be a rampant decisions that needs to be made in terms of how do we stop this deepfake, etc. There was some sort of a decision that was made through the executive order, but that's not sufficient. There were a lot of things that had to be put in place, which we couldn't, and that's going to significantly impact the voter decisions. We'll have to live with it and see what happens next time.
Wow, exactly. We will definitely have to live with it. Well, thank you so much. What a terrific presentation. I think we all learned a lot. Thank you very much. Absolutely. Oh, and I have special SEBA swag to give you.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And we expect this to be on the shelves at Walmart coming right up.